First, I want to thank everybody for coming today to support the meaning behind Juneteenth. So I'm going to share my speech that I wrote that pertains to why we still celebrate it today. We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Now, to be deemed a citizen in America is to be declared equal, but for many, this declaration is simply just words. At the core of citizenship, it is more than a legal label. It embodies the ideal of equal representation. Now, equalization in the context of citizenship is defined to ensure that all people, regardless of race, nationality, or background, are treated fairly under the law and have the same access to protections and opportunities. This promise of equality exists in theory, but is ultimately denied in practice. This false promise raises the question of whether it is truly liberty and justice for all, because citizenship without equality is justice unfulfilled. If the 14th Amendment inside of our United States Constitution guarantees equal protection of the laws, why does systematic racism and unequal justice still exist? If the Constitution protects voting rights, why are voter suppression tactics still silencing millions? And if America preaches liberty and justice for all, why do economic, educational, and social inequalities still define people's opportunities? Now, the common denominator to all of these uncertainties is that regardless of our role in society, it is our responsibility as citizens to fully uphold the principles of the Constitution. The constitutional foundation of a nonpartisan perspective of citizenship is rooted in the principle and declaration that, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction are citizens of in both the nation and the state in which they reside, end quote. This suggests that the focus should be on unity rather than issues of race, party, or background. So I am using our rights that are defended by the First Amendment, which establishes the right to freedom of speech, to advocate for the real representation of equality in our society. Now, political activist Angela Davis defines systematic racism as this deeply rooted issue of structural inequality within our society systems, like laws, schools, and the economy. Although the state granted us equality in principle, significant discrepancies remain that limited voting power of those of different race. These limits included literacy tests and grandfather clauses which stifled anyone not in the vast majority of the nation that was allowed to vote. For centuries, people of color have been oppressed within our system despite significant social and political advancements. For example, Jim Crow laws, which were established in the late 19th century after Reconstruction ended around 1877, enforced racial segregation and discrimination. This system of segregation was further legitimized by the courts. In the infamous Supreme Court case of Plessy versus Ferguson, the separate but equal doctrine was established, legally upholding racial segregation under the 14th Amendment. This was eventually overturned by Brown versus Board of Education that ruled racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional. This declared the phrase, separate but equal, inherently unequal. Although this marked a significant improvement, modern society still reveals the persistent inequalities within our system. For instance, the United States criminal justice system has been heavily influenced by discrimination. According to recent data from the Fair Fight Initiative, when a defendant is a person of color, prosecutors are twice as likely to ask for a mandatory prison sentence. The only way forward from this flawed system requires us to acknowledge its shortcomings and address them by treating every individual with the equality and dignity that the Constitution sets as a goal for our society. Like how after conviction, the citizen is now deprived of their legal voting rights. As a result of this discriminatory process, the issue of systematic racism extends into voter suppression. Voter suppression has silenced millions of valuable voices within our nation through long lines, confusing rules, and limited access. Although equality is promised under the law, barriers of voting still exist. Our Constitution states in the 15th Amendment that, quote, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, end quote. This addition to the 14th Amendment established the core principle that voting rights must not be denied or restricted based on who you are. Identity should never determine the value of a citizen's voice, and the Constitution makes it clear that no matter who you are, your voice in our democracy must always be protected.
Amen.
Ultimately, these two issues have caused significant harm to people's opportunities. In his 1964 speech, The Battle or the Bullet, Malcolm X states, quote, "We want freedom by any means necessary. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace," end quote. Through this powerful statement, Malcolm X emphasizes that the struggle is not just about the fight for desegregation or voting rights, but about the material conditions promised to citizens by the United States Constitution. Malcolm X's speech explains why these inequalities shape opportunities by arguing that society is fundamentally structured to deprive marginalized Americans of equal rights, leaving them vulnerable to continued systematic oppression. As a result of the stark and persistent racial disparities have existed and continue to exist in employment, wages, and benefits, which negatively affect the overall economic prosperity. The Constitution states, quote, "No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws," end quote. This clear statement shows that this is a legal right and not just a privilege granted selectively. In 1954, Briggs versus Elliott, which was a case that deemed segregation of school buses unconstitutional. However, many Black and low-income students continued to attend these underfunded schools due to residential segregation. As a result, students from these poorly funded schools were more likely to end up in low-wage or unstable employment. Although the United States Constitution promises equal protection of the laws and the ideals of liberty and justice for all, this persistent reality of these inequalities reveals our failure as citizens to fully uphold these principles. Now, from the table on which the Constitution was written to the schools and communities that it shapes today, its influence remains deeply rooted in American society. Now, to truly honor the Constitution, the United States must move beyond formal equality and actively ensure that its promises are lived experiences for all citizens, while upholding the standards that past generations believed we could achieve and which our nation was built upon. Now, in response, political leaders have begun to propose solutions to address these issues, including reforms related to prosecutions and voter suppression. And advocacy represents a significant step in upholding constitutional equality as it transforms these written ideals into actively defended rights. Equality lies at the very heart of the Constitution, and that is why, as citizens, it is our duty to champion equality within our democracy. By ensuring fairness and justice for all, we safeguard the very foundations of our nation. This commitment to equality is what sustains a healthy society for all. And as poet Amanda Gorman reminds us in her poem, "The Hill We Climb," quote, "When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. If only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it." End quote. Thank you.